This episode is brought to you by Iams Pet Food. When you choose Iams dry dog or cat food, you can see a difference in your pet with your own eyes. Healthy energy in 5 days, healthy digestion in 10 days, and healthy skin and coat in just 25 days. Satisfaction for you and them. Guaranteed or your money back. Feed Iams dry dog or cat food and see a visible difference. Visit iams.com/difference to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by the Weather Channel. What does the Weather Channel app share in common with a personal trainer and a life coach? It's an ally on your quest to wellness. What you do with its insight is up to you. Like running an extra mile when air quality is good, or checking your allergy forecast so not even ragweed can disrupt your chi. It's more than a weather app. What in the weather are you waiting for? Be a force of nature with the Weather Channel app.
This episode is sponsored by One Welbeck. Hello everybody, I'm Nicole Goodman.
And I'm Lauren Mishcon, and welcome to Self Care Club.
This is the final show in our menopause mini-series, and we hope that it's been informative and helpful so far. We've had actually some wonderful feedback.
Amazing feedback, and so many women who've actually gone to seek help, who've emailed us from their GP's waiting room to say, I'm here, I listened to the show.
And I think one of the overriding things that has come through, and I'm so happy about it, is that women are understanding that they really need to be their own advocates.
And that they don't need to suffer.
They don't need to suffer. So that's been amazing. But today we wanted to focus on HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. And to help us with that, we are delighted and honoured to welcome to the show today Professor Dame Lesley Regan.
Professor Dame Lesley Regan is a leading gynaecologist. She's a prominent figure in her field, having recently stepped down as president of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists, and is now the new chair of Wellbeing of Women. Having graduated from the Royal Free Hospital School of Medicine in London in 1980, Lesley pursued her career at Addenbrooke's Hospital, Cambridge, where she first became enthused by clinical and laboratory research, completing an MD on miscarriage. Professor Dame Regan combines her clinical and research work with a passion for communicating to the wider public, writing 2 successful books on miscarriage and pregnancy, and presenting a series of 8 BBC Horizon documentaries. In 2015, she received an honorary doctorate of science from University College London for her contribution to women's health. Her collaborative approach to women's health has resulted in her receiving honorary fellowships of 7 UK specialists and several international colleges of obstetrics and gynecology. Lesley, welcome to Self Care Club. We are so delighted to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And it's a special day because it is today, the day we're recording, World Menopause Day.
It is indeed.
It couldn't be more fitting.
No.
It's jam-packed full of things to do to broadcast how important it is.
Absolutely. Can we start with the basics for anybody who could really be helped with some just clear clarification? What is HRT and why is it important?
HRT stands for hormone replacement therapy. Some people like to call it MRT, menopausal replacement therapy. But basically, this is providing, and we can talk about all the different routes it can be given by, providing hormones that the ovary is no longer making because the woman has got past her fertile life. So you'll understand that the hormone levels go down and they're on a special negative feedback loop. So what happens is when the ovary no longer is producing enough estrogen, the signal goes up to the brain and the brain says, we haven't got enough estrogen. So it pushes something called FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, to drive the ovary to try and produce more. But because it can't, because the egg supply has run out or it's so very low, it still doesn't get more estrogen. So the signal goes back up again to the brain and the brain says, more FSH, which is why doctors sometimes measure that as a proof, if you like, that a woman's become menopausal.
Yes. Okay. Great. And why is it important?
Well, I think what we've seen over the last few years, an enormous number of women who've been greatly, greatly benefited by having hormone replacement therapy. when I went to medical school, which was a long time ago now, we talked a little bit about menopause, but really women disappeared from view from the health service after that because I think not only was I trained to work in a disease intervention service, not a health service, but we really thought about women as reproductive organs.
Yes.
And I'm not having a go at men about that. It's simply that that's how it was viewed. And remember that my mother and my grandmother didn't expect to live till 85 or 90. Yeah. So I'm probably the first generation of woman who's going to most likely live longer postmenopausal than I was reproductive.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important thing for women to understand, because although women live longer than men, they have a disproportionately much longer span of their lives in poor health. And a lot of this is to do with things that HRT and hormone replacement therapy can help mitigate. I mean, you can't completely get rid of the risks of cardiovascular disease and osteoporosis, thinning bones and frailty, but you can postpone them a bit. Yeah. And so the whole purpose, I think, of the Women's Health Strategy is in the UK now, or in England, is to try and close that gap at the end of women's lives and give them a longer period of living well, as opposed to living with disability. And a lot of women have been very, very disabled by their menopause. Yeah. And I would say as well, a lot of the culprit was the two studies that came out in 2003, which really put a sort of a real blanket over hormone replacement therapy. It was painted to be this wicked thing that gave women cancer, or did terrible things to them. And unfortunately, it took 2 decades to demonstrate that the analysis and the statistics were flawed. They were looking at women who were much older than the usual cohort who would benefit from going on to HRT. And I think it's really important for us to understand that. And I think I have a male gynecological colleague who works in the US, and he often says that he thinks that we will look back in history and think that one of the worst things that we did to women as healthcare professionals was to prevent them having HRT for that 2 decades. Wow. And now, of course, you can see there's a lot of it, but it's really important to have HRT and to find the best way to deliver it for that individual woman. So I often say to the ladies that I'm looking after when I'm doing a clinic, it's a little bit like the contraceptive pill. Don't give up if one doesn't suit you. We try another one. There's as many types of HRT and hormonal contraceptive pills as there are sweets in a sweet shop. Yes. I mean, you just have to find the one that suits you if you're keen to have the benefits. Now, it's not for everybody, and some women don't want to take it, but I think that I see women who probably have partly decided, or they're feeling so unwell that they're asking for help. Yeah. And I think that it can be, it can be quite remarkable, the relief they get from their symptoms in a relatively short space of time.
I've seen it with the lady sitting to my left.
Yes, it was a life-changing experience, wasn't it? In both ways. Yes. And it can be very quick.
Yes. In
how the menopause symptoms come on and then how they are rectified.
Absolutely. And it's just, and you see women who come in and they burst into a smile and say, I feel wonderful. Yeah. And they look it because they've just... And it's very interesting as well, because they start off with the thing about they've got a bit of brain fog, or they've got hot sweats, or they say, no, I haven't got those. And then I say, and how's your sleep pattern? And then they'll look at me and say, how did you know? I said, well, because I've been there. I know how awful it is at 4:00 in the morning to think, and this is the best I'm going to feel all day, because I'm not going to get back to sleep again, and I've got to do this. And you've got small children, or you've got bigger children, or whatever. You've got all these things that you're trying to juggle, and you just feel awful because you can't sleep properly.
Would you say, for that article that came out all those years ago, would you say, now that it's been disproved and that it was flawed, to the women that still have the education around that, because there's still a lot of people say to me, oh no, I would never take HRT. No, it's not safe.
I'm not putting drugs in my body.
Yeah. What would you say to those women that are still maybe don't have the education or the information at hand as to how HRT can benefit them?
Well, I would say you owe it to yourself to listen and be a little bit receptive to what the potential benefits are. As I say, it's not for everybody, and I'm not going to ram it down someone's throat or stick it on their skin if they don't want it. But I think that you can be, well, I know I can be very persuasive at the benefits. And, you know, I'm quite fit and I'm quite slim, but I know that if I fall over on the tube and break my hip or fracture, you know, one of my long bones, that there's a significant mortality to me for this next year. I mean, 10% of women who do that at my age are not going to make it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then we also have to reflect on the fact that I don't think that it'll be, even if I had the best care and the best surgeon and and the best physio, and I'm really dutiful about my exercises and I'm really determined, but getting back to being as independent as I am now is unlikely. And I don't know about you, but, you know, dying is one thing, but, you know, being dependent on other people and being very frail, it wouldn't suit me at all.
No, absolutely not.
No, it wouldn't suit me at all.
And it wouldn't suit my daughters either. I've got wonderful twin daughters who are in their 30s now, but they always say, oh, yeah, Mum, yeah, we don't want you to stop working and things like that because you'll just go, it'll be impossible.
I'm really interested to know your opinion on people who say we're over-medicalising the menopause. After all, it's natural. It happens to every woman. You're supposed to go through it. Why is there such a hoo-ha? Why don't women just get on with it like our grandmothers did? And what's all the fuss?
I think I touched on that a little bit earlier because I think that we didn't live so long then. And I think that's really important. So the quality of your life now in that extended lifespan becomes much more of a focus. And therefore we've got to think about the things, not just HRT, but diet and exercise. You know, weight-bearing exercise is really crucial for bone strength. And it really is a very, very important thing.
She's giving me the glare, Lesley, because my DEXA scan revealed some osteopenia.
Well, can I just say here that whilst it's osteopenic, you've got a chance.
Wow.
So you can take a variety of different potions, including estrogen, to improve your osteopenia. But once it goes into the osteoporotic bracket, you can't get it back into the osteopenic bracket. All you can do if you've become osteoporotic is make sure that more of your bones don't become osteoporotic. So please accept the glare and do something about it.
She needs to come to the gym with me, Lesley. I'm trying desperately to get her into the gym with me.
She is trying to coax me.
But it's always a no.
Well.
Yes, now Leslie's giving you a glare.
It's a double glare. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, go on.
Can anyone use HRT?
Well, I think there's usually a way to find hormone replacement therapy that's suitable for most people. I mean, there used to be a terrible fear about breast cancer.
Yes.
And I think that that's something I feel rather passionate about because I had breast cancer several times and I'm still on HRT. And I think what's important and what was wrongly portrayed previously was that yes, we know that women who are on estrogen replacement or HRT, let's simplify, HRT, have a small but a finite increase in risk of the numbers of early breast cancers. But they don't have an increased mortality, so they don't die from that because I think all women on HRT are being monitored, and if they're going for their regular mammograms, this will be picked up. Now, I'm not saying that just because you're not going to die, you know, that's okay to give people cancer, but it's a small number. And what I think is really important for women to understand is that being overweight or smoking or drinking heavily is far more likely to give them breast cancer or increase their risks, particularly the obesity. And that's something that I think people find difficult to and uncomfortable to accept.
Yes.
But it's a tiny, tiny thing, the breast cancer risk from HRT. And I think and it's really important for women to understand that. And of course, if you've got a long family history of breast cancer, and I do actually in my family, I don't have the genetic variants that predispose to it, but I do have a strong family history. But I really do think that my symptoms when I'm not on HRT, the aching joints and the sleep problems and things, they're going to do far more to disturb my lifestyle than anything that the HRT could. And fortunately, when I had my episodes of breast cancer and radiotherapy and stuff like that, fortunately, I had a surgeon who understood that these are relative risks, and an oncologist that understood that. And not all of them do, because I think so many of the times that we're dealing with cancers, cancer doctors are programmed to prevent people dying from things.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we can lose sight of the quality of their life while they're alive, and that is really important too.
Absolutely. Can we go through the various options for HRT and what you feel are sort of the downsides or the benefits of the various options? I know every woman's individual, but just so people have a roundabout idea.
Well, there are lots of ways to deliver HRT.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get estrogen into the body for all the benefits on the bones and the cardiovascular system, and some people think it improves or postpones dementia. All of those things, your skin, your hair, and then you have to, if the woman has got a womb, got a uterus still, then you've got to make sure that her womb lining doesn't become overactive. So if she's got if she's got a uterus, then you've got to think about a progestogen as well to counteract it. So that's number one. So you can take it as tablets.
Yep.
And you can take both estrogen tablets and progesterone tablets. I often prescribe the micronized progesterone at night, which is Utrogestan, simply because it tends to make women a little bit soporific. And usually, coming back to the sleep point, usually they've told me that they're having problems with their sleep pattern. So it makes sense to take something like that at night. It might help with them, and particularly when we're getting them into the HRT. And then we can give it transdermally across the skin. And that's a really, really important step forward, I think, in HRT management and delivery, because the great thing about giving it via the skin, so either in patch form or rubbing on a gel on a daily basis, is, well, first of all, it's, if you need to stop it for any reason, you straight away, immediately, you just don't put on any more. And secondly, it doesn't go through the liver the first time it passes around your body. So it doesn't start being broken down and metabolized, which means that it doesn't increase the woman's risk of a blood clot or thrombosis.
Ah, okay.
And so there's a lot of concern about, or there has been in the past, women who've had a thrombotic episode or got a strong history of heart disease and things like that, they shouldn't be having it in case they have a blood clot. And it is a really important, thrombosis is a really big issue. Yeah. But I think that's a really important point. You can give transdermal estrogen to women who've had who've got a thrombotic risk with great it's got a good safety profile.
Most of my peers now are on HRT, and most of them are on the gel. It seems to be the first stop that the doctors prescribe nowadays. Is that right?
Well, I think the word is out that it's an easy way to do it, and and you don't, what I would say was, well, when do you shower or when do you bath? And if it's at night, well, okay, put it on at night, and if it's in the morning, well, then do it after you've done that. Very easy. And then, as I say, you can take oral progesterone tablets, or you can have, one of my favourite things is fitting Mirena coils, because they really are such a fabulous way to control the womb lining and stop it getting thick. And they last for 5 years. And I think for many women, it's a particularly good way to do it. You never have to forget, never have to remember about taking a tablet or anything like that.
You did, in fact, fit Davina McCall's one live on television, I believe.
Didn't I? Yes.
Did.
And she called me fairy fingers. And so I've had a lot of ladies come and see me afterwards, and I want a Davina McCall, or they'll say, I want a fairy fingers job.
If I knew I was having
like
you,
a haircut.
Yes, if I knew I was having you, I could maybe be persuaded. But I've had bad experiences, I'm afraid. I'm not.
No, they are really marvellous. If you came to me, you wouldn't feel a thing.
Okay, I'll definitely consider that. What is this about bioidentical HRT, and what is the difference between that and body identical hormones?
Well, I think it all gets rather muddled up.
Yes.
So, what we're saying is that we're trying to use, it's a chemical. Hormones are chemicals, and we're trying to match them to the normal we want to match. We're matching the recipe to what your body would normally produce.
Okay.
And so a lot of people describe the menopause as being a hormone deficiency state. And it goes on at a particular time for all the reasons I started off by saying, because your ovaries are no longer producing these hormones. So you're trying to mimic what your ovary is no longer producing. But I do think that some of the transdermal preparations and the micronized progesterone are as bioidentical or biological or whatever you want to call it. And I think people get very muddled up by the wording.
Yes.
I always draw the analogy about immunology. You know, very few people really understand immunology. So if you give people an immunological explanation, they think, oh, yeah, well, that sounds very sophisticated. I expect they're right. And of course, it doesn't mean they're right at all. So I think that, I would say to women, you need to go along for the simplest type. I think the ones that we've talked about, the transdermal, are probably best for all sorts of reasons. But, I've got female, medical colleagues who would say, well, there's absolutely nothing wrong and no great benefit in not just taking an oral tablet. And some people like to take a tablet.
Yes, I get that. So you don't need to be going off to somewhere private and getting body identical and paying a fortune for this because it's so much better than what your NHS GP would give you.
Can I just draw the analogy here to, you can either buy vitamins in the generic packet that looks rather boring from the local chemist or Boots. Yeah. Or you can go and buy ones that are very expensive in posh wrappings.
Right.
Is that the only difference?
Like you could buy 16p ibuprofen or you could spend £4.50 on Nurofen. It's the same drug. Okay, good.
Subtle results, still you, but with fewer lines. Botox Cosmetic, onabotulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Hey everyone, we've all struggled with one-size-fits-all weight loss plans that just don't work. It's like wearing shoes that don't fit. That's why I want to introduce you to Noom. Unlike those cookie-cutter diets, Noom creates personalized plans tailored to your unique needs. With Noom, it's not just about losing weight. It's about understanding your body and mind. They consider your dietary restrictions, medical issues, and lifestyle, meeting you where you are on your health journey. Noom feels so personalized. It doesn't restrict what you eat. You can enjoy treats without shame. Instead, Noom helps you to make smarter choices and build healthier habits. The daily lessons and coaching helps keep you motivated, focusing on progress, not perfection. Noom's approach is a game changer, rooted in psychology and biology. Over 5.2 million people have found success with Noom, and active users lose an average of 15 pounds in 15 weeks. Stay focused on what's important to you with Noom's psychology and biology-based approach. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com. Based on 3.5 study of actively engaged Noom users with minimum starting BMI of 25. Individual results may vary. Visit our website for more information.
What about testosterone in women? Do you think it's necessary and is it a good idea?
Well, I don't think things are good ideas or bad ideas.
Okay.
I think we've got to match them to the woman and in front of her. And usually, when I see women who would like to use testosterone, they've been told this by a friend or a family member, or they've read about it. And I suppose my gut reaction to that is, well, there's no way that I'm going to jeopardise this conversation going on about improving her health with telling her she can't have something, because But you do have to remember it's not licensed for use.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, because it isn't. Well, it just isn't licensed, and it hasn't got through the MHRA protocols. And that means that you have to write. If I was to give it to you, Lauren, I'd have to give you the prescription.
Mm-hmm.
I can't prescribe it on the NHS. It would have to be a private prescription.
Okay.
And it would have to say prescribed off licence.
Wow.
With the patient's explicit understanding.
Okay. Gosh.
That it's off, that you understand it's being prescribed off licence.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't say that, I suspect that the pharmacy won't cash the prescription in.
Wow.
And what are the benefits of testosterone? Because the estrogen and the testosterone, they kind of cover different symptoms. Is that correct?
Well, I think it varies, and not everybody feels that testosterone is helpful. Whereas I've got other ladies that come and see me who say, well, without my testosterone, I don't have much energy and I don't have any libido.
Same.
Other women will say, well, made no difference to me.
Well, the
and I
other
think
day, I realised I hadn't taken it for a week and I forgot the word iPad. I could not.
You also forgot the word stairs.
She loves it. I couldn't remember what the word stairs was. And I thought, I don't think I've taken my testosterone. Anyway, I started putting that back on. And I feel a lot better now.
Well, I think it's very, very individual. And so I think as long as we always think, well, look, what we're trying to do is to make the woman in front of us have a better quality of life.
Yeah.
And then you jiggle with the potions and the things then.
And it's a trial and error, isn't it? Getting your
I think
HRT
so.
correct.
I think so. And, with dosage and with types, I would just say, as I started off by saying, make sure that you realise that if one form doesn't suit you, that there are plenty of others to try, and that you don't give up on that, because I think it can be of great benefit in reducing all of those symptoms of estrogen deficiency, which women can find very distressing at a time in their lives when they're probably up, at the top of their game, and that's the thing. And that, of course, is why there's been so much interest in it on a sort of a national level. I think that when people woke up to the fact that losing women from the workplace and from the economy between the ages of 45 to 65 makes no sense, because you can replace her with a body of somebody else, maybe even a woman, but you can't replace the experience she's got. And she's often the person in the company or in the organisation or in that shop or whatever that does the mentoring. And then I've always thought it's quite difficult to aspire to being something if you can't see anybody up there to base it on. We all need role models, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, I love that.
Is it true that women who start HRT in perimenopause lessen their incidence of new onset depression?
Well, I think that's another sort of contested view.
Okay.
But if you take the view, but my logical, common sense housewife or housekeeping genes sort of say, well, actually, if you reduce the amount of times during a day or a week or a month or a year that a woman feels tired, washed out, not able to cope, I think that can have a benefit. It's lovely, when I walked in, I said, "Oh, what a lovely blue shirt you've got," and you smiled. And little things can really, really lift you.
Yes.
And I think that's important, that we understand that our mental health is, we can do a lot for ourselves to maximise our mental health and to not be in a situation where we're constantly gloomy or thinking of negative things. Some of my colleagues call me the incurable optimist, but I am, because that's the only way I can manage my life, really, because I'm often trying to fit in too many things, but I always think, oh, well, I'm sure we'll find a way to sort this out. And I'm not saying that I've got the right attitude, but it's the one that suits me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And other people, would feel so uncomfortable with that attitude and are very risk averse, and that suits them.
Yes.
And so I'm not saying I'm right, just that I think you've got to work out what's good for you.
Yes.
Yes.
But the trouble is, I think some women have so many symptoms that become quite overwhelming if they're suffering with the mental health side of perimenopause. And then they can't see that might be a solution because they're so far in it already.
Yes. And this brings me back to the sort of the perimenopausal thing in the workplace. I think that women are so defined by what they're doing in the workplace, And also at that particular age, they've often got children who are growing up or going off to, to start their own lives. Perhaps they haven't got that same sort of dynamic at home where they are the person that keeps it all together, the linchpin, as I often refer to it. And then if you find that you can't cope at work, then you people lose their identity.
Well, you're a bit of a no man's land, aren't you? Because you're not so necessary at home and you're not really thriving at work. So where are you in the world?
And then you give up. And then, what you see is you see people who retire early and they've lost their identity. And the next thing you hear about is that they're really unwell or they've had an accident or something. And so I'm a great advocate for people trying to be as active and to keep going for as long as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to help women find the best way to traverse, if you like, that, or get through that transition stage and find an equilibrium in a different place.
Can we talk about lifestyle for a minute? Because you're touching on it, aren't you, of how important it is in terms of your mental health and your physical health. What would you say are the main things that women should focus on and how they can help themselves through the perimenopause in their lifestyle habits?
Well, for the reasons, obvious reasons, I think trying to normalise your weight is really important. I mean, it's easy to say, and people will say to me, sometimes my patients say to me, it's all right for you because you're quite slim. But it doesn't come naturally. I mean, I have to work at it, and I have to work at doing some exercise, and I do have to work at not eating things that are highly calorific.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I don't particularly like processed foods, and I do love fruit and vegetables and things like that. But it's also, but I have had to educate myself a little bit about pulses and things like that. That wasn't how I was, in quotes, brought up. That's a generational thing. I'm a sort of a vintage that didn't really have that. It was potatoes, wasn't it, or bread or whatever. But I do think it's really important, weight. And we do know that as women grow older, they find it more difficult to lose weight. I've often said to my daughters in the past, when I was in my 30s or 20s or 30s, if the dress I wanted to wear on Saturday night was a bit tight, I'd just miss a couple of meals.
Yes.
I'm sure I shouldn't admit to that. Yeah. And I'm in it and I'm off. Yeah. But now, it doesn't move it at all.
Forget it.
So you do have to, our metabolism does seem to slow down and we seem to respond differently. And then, of course, we put weight on in an apple-shaped after the menopause, and that's all to do with the way our cardiovascular changes occur. And so instead of being the pear shape, we get midriff stuff. So, I mean, I don't think I weigh more, but I've definitely got more around the central bits, and that's because your centripetal fat and the fat that around your organs, it becomes more difficult to shift. And that's an aging thing, and I don't think we can change that, but we have to adapt our lifestyles to take it on board.
So weight management is important.
Weight management, really important, I think.
How about things like sleep, exercise?
Yeah.
What exercise do you do? I'd love to know.
Oh, right. Well, I have got, I've never been a gym bunny. I can always think of something else to do rather that's more important than go to the gym.
Oh, anything.
Yeah.
I'd rather dust my
So what I've
board.
done is I've got a static bike in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And a pair of very old trainers and leggings or whatever. And I try and get on my bike in the morning for 10 or 20 minutes. And I come off it and I'm hot and sweaty and I jump in the shower. And at the weekend, I try and do it watching a television program.
Nice.
Because that way if you can get involved in it all, or put on your headphones and listen to a podcast or something.
Totally, self-care
you could listen to this one.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I just try and do that with the weekend. I try and do a bit longer. And I suppose I am running around quite a lot.
Yes.
But I'm not. I don't play tennis, and I don't do. I don't do competitive sports or anything like that.
When would you have time for
never
tennis?
been to a gym.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Neither
You're
have
also
I.
very busy in women's wellness and,
You are.
and saving women's healthcare. So
Well, it's something I feel it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
It's so lovely, to have conversations with women. It's such a privilege because they'll say, "Oh, it has really made me feel so much better." The ones that I particularly like is I get a letter from somebody, often a handwritten letter that says, or an email, I suppose these days, but says, "Oh, I've read your your article about such and such, and you don't know me, and now I don't need to come and see you because I feel that I know what to do. And I think empowering women to be part of the solution is really, really rewarding.
Yes, and advocate for themselves.
Yes.
Before we jumped on air, we were talking about the topics that we were going to cover on today, and you mentioned that it was about education and women understanding from the very beginning what was going on. Can you just tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I really do believe that women are part of the solution, girls and women. And if we educated girls and young women to understand about the things that are really going to affect them across their lives, I think we would be doing them an enormous favour. And, we can go on to, that's down to schools and families and education. But I'm not meaning just about sex education and preventing becoming pregnant unexpectedly when you don't want to. I think it's about understanding that girls and women, and nowadays it usually starts about the age of 10 or 11. That's the average age of period starting in this country now.
So early.
Wow.
And that then they're going to have 12 periods a year for 40 years of their lives. Now, I don't know anything else that happens to human beings quite so frequently. So if you are disabled by the heaviness of your period or your painful periods, and you have to miss school, or you can't go to work, or you can't leave the house because you're frightened of flooding and leaking and whatever, this is having a really disabling effect on you. And I think what we've got to do is to get girls and women to understand that that is not normal, or even if it's their normal pattern, that they don't have to put up with it.
Yes.
So one of the things that I particularly put a lot of energy into is chairing the charity Wellbeing of Women. And I think you've been to some of their events, haven't you? And we run these campaigns. So we had a menopause workplace pledge campaign a couple of years ago, and we got thousands of companies to sign up to this thing to say we're going to empower women in the workplace to understand that we'll listen and try and make adjustments. And currently the campaign is Just a Period. And it's being led by a lot of women who've had period problems. Yeah. And I'm really proud to share with you the fact that the film Just a Period has just won a third sector award for campaigns in women's health.
That's great.
And it's so well deserved. So just go online, anybody who's listening, and go Wellbeing of Women or go onto YouTube, Just a Period. Mm-hmm. And it's lovely. But what it's demonstrating is that women can get hold of their lives again and get back into control if they understand that it's not just a period and that they don't have to suffer. And I would say as well, I feel equally passionate about empowering girls and women, this is particularly important globally, to understand that they can control if and when and with whom and how many times they become pregnant.
Yes.
So if they could manage their periods and they could manage their fertility, it would become so obvious that then their fertility would end at a certain point.
Yes.
We wouldn't have all those distressed ladies in their 40s coming to tell me, well, nobody told me that I wasn't. And of course, you wouldn't have had to have the menopause revolution that we've had in the last couple of years because it would have been evident.
Yes.
Because these are things that are predictable. So if you start to menstruate at the age of 10, you can predict the fact that women are going to have a lot of periods throughout their lives, so let's get it right for them. You can also predict that at some point, and some women do it earlier than others, they're going to have a menopause. So let's empower those women to understand what's happening to them and to understand that actually it's not necessary to suffer.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
I think that's a message that's gone across this whole month, isn't it? That we are kind of, in a way, conditioned to expect to suffer. You're going to have periods that are going to be awful. You're going to go through childbirth. It's going to be terrible. You're expected to suck it all up. But actually, you don't have to.
No, exactly.
Can get help.
And there's lots of ways you can do it. And And when I came out of medical school again, we didn't have that many treatments for painful, heavy periods. But now we've got a wealth of stuff that can, which is minimally invasive or not even invasive at all. We've got medications, we've got Mirena coils. And something else I think is really important to understand is that, there's often a headline that says, 1 in 10 women have endometriosis and it took them 7 or 8 years to get a diagnosis. But, you didn't wake up one morning with endometriosis or polycystic ovaries for that matter. You didn't. You woke up one morning and you had painful, heavy periods. And because they weren't managed well, and if everyone told you, it's just the curse,
Yes, of course. My grandma always called it the curse.
It's just your monthly time,
Yeah.
and that's what it is,
dreadful.
and it's going to be painful. And then over a period of time, because it's not being managed, then you develop endometriosis. So you don't wake up and say, "Oh, I've got polycystic ovary syndrome." No, you say, "Oh, I've got these irregular periods, and I can't get pregnant, and I'm putting on weight, or
And I've got
hair
very
on
hairy arms.
hair on my chin, and this, that, and the other." So we need to sort of, nip in the bud these things, and just to get girls, I think, and women to understand that there's so much they can do to help themselves have a happy life and have a good level of well-being.
Yeah.
And once they understand that, and the earlier the age they understand that, then that will lead them so well into dealing with their perimenopause effectively.
Exactly. And the other marvellous thing that we must not forget, which I think is unique to women. I mean, after all, we're 51% of the population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when we go to healthcare professionals, most of the time we're not ill. We're trying to do things to maintain our health. You're not ill when you go for contraception or to have your smear done, are you?
No.
Or your
Or to give
mammogram.
birth.
And you're not usually ill when you're pregnant.
No.
Absolutely right. You're going through a transition or a phase in your life. And I think we've got to understand and really, really sort of drum it into young girls and women that this is maintenance health. And we've
Yes.
got to make our health services understand that to make it difficult for girls and women to access those very simple things. I mean, none of what we've talked about is rocket science. It's very simple.
It's common sense.
It's common sense. And it's madness not to make those sort of services really easily accessible so that women can then get on with their lives and we can worry about other things. And we could save a shed load of money as well if we were to make those sorts of things really accessible, which we could then plough in to the problems that are really going to be health issues in later life, which tend to be expensive to fix.
Yes.
And that's the cardiovascular disease and the osteoporosis and the frailty and the dementia and possibly a mixture of all three.
Yes.
But they are the things that really consume an enormous amount of our healthcare resources. So let's get the maintenance stuff and the bits that, or rather the input at the beginning of their lives and in the middle years that are going to postpone those problems a little bit longer and maintain that well-being and that healthy living for as long as possible.
Yeah, because when you've got slim, fit, active women who are feeling good about themselves and have mojo, the world runs better.
Well, it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that the FTSE 100 index is differentiated from the FTSE 500 index by a simple fact, and that is you get into the FTSE 100 when you've got equal male and female representation on your board.
Aha.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it is.
And I think the other thing we need to just
Wow.
plug in this
Yep.
this particular podcast, self-care, is that the other thing that I think is unique to women is the fact that they don't keep the information to themselves. So if I
Yes.
explain something to you in a way that you can digest and think about and think, oh, yeah, that applies to me, you don't keep the information to yourself.
No, we share it with everybody.
You tell it to everybody, don't you? You
We
tell it
do.
to your sister, you tell it to your
Yes.
colleague at work, you tell it to the next door neighbour, you
Yes.
talk about it to the woman in Waitrose or Lidl who's packing your shopping, and you tell it to everybody.
Anybody that will listen.
Because
Yes.
women are very generous, I think, with good advice. And that's why I think we miss a trick if we don't make them part of the solution, because they can be a real army of women's health ambassadors, can't they?
Absolutely.
I just got goosebumps. That was lovely. Yeah, that was lovely.
For people who would like to come and see you for your professional services, how is the best way to find you?
Well, probably I practice at St Mary's, which is often rather difficult to negotiate because of geographical things. Or you can come and find me at One Welbeck,
Yes.
where we've got a lovely women's health floor.
We've been there and it was wonderful.
It was so
And I
lovely.
think it's it really is. It's quite unique because
It is.
it's not just gynecology stuck beside breast health. It's all about the health, not just about diseases and disorders and problems. But we've got 6 or 7 different gynecological specialties, and it's not just that's all put together. But we've got these. We've developed integrative pathways up and down the building to all the other different specialties. So, women respond very differently, particularly in their menopausal years. They present differently with heart disease. They don't have the classic central chest pain and the thing going down their left arm. They present with indigestion and all sorts of other things. And we need to understand that sometimes, well, far too often, I should say, women present to healthcare professionals with heart disease as a terminal event because they have got such advanced heart disease that they have the fatal heart attack. I mean, that's shocking.
Shocking.
And often they're turned away from emergency services because they're told, you're making a fuss, because they haven't presented in the classical way.
Yes.
And then, of course, so you're then trying to look after women with more advanced disease, and surprise, surprise, that doesn't respond as well as if you get it early. Mm-hmm. And then you have to add to the fact, or add to the disadvantage, should I say, that almost all of the interventions and all of the drugs have been trialled in men.
I know.
Yes.
So there's a massive gender health gap here.
Yes.
And if you take any disorder in later life, you will find that there's a gender health gap about it. So I think it's really important to get women to understand what they can do to help themselves and how they can advocate for themselves. No, I'm sorry, I'm not hysterical. No, I'm not just having a bad day. No, I'm not depressed. I have a symptom, and I've got this horrible feeling of an elephant sitting on my chest. And no, it's not a pain that's going down my arm, but I know there's something wrong.
Because women do.
And no, I'm not anxious. And no, exactly, like you said, it is such a brave thing to do, though, to sit in a doctor's office and say, actually, no, you're not listening to me. I need you to hear what I'm saying. And it's hard. I went through quite a circus, didn't I?
Well, it did. That's exactly what happened to you.
To get my HRT correct. And I had to go to 3 different doctors. And eventually, but I really advocated for myself. I didn't go back to those doctors. And I didn't have the guts to say, no, that's not right. I'm not depressed. I just went somewhere else. And it was hard. And
it's an important point you make there about the depression, because actually I think it's really important that you don't write off menopausal women's symptoms as depressed.
Yes.
But I also think it's important that we recognise that women do get depressed during their menopause. And I think that I often see women who tell me that they are depressed. They know they're a bit depressed, but because they know it and they know why they are, perhaps they're going through a divorce, or they're going through problems with their children or elderly relatives that they seem to think, well, so I'm not eligible to have any treatment.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, that just because you have the insight to know why you're feeling this way doesn't mean that you should exclude yourself from having something to help. And so I'm not advocating everybody going on to antidepressant medication, but some of the newest forms of SSRI, they really are. They're the selective serotonin uptake inhibitors. They are. I think they can be really quite transformational. Again, you need to make sure you find one that's good for you, and that you need to find a doctor who's going to help you go through that. But I do think that can be helpful as well. So I think it's a question of we mustn't say that everybody's going to be treated by HRT or by some other cure or whatever. In the same way you wouldn't say, well, everyone's going to be cured by black cohosh or soya or whatever. We recognise that there are different things in the recipe, and that you need to find the one that suits you.
I think that's what's coming through this whole mini-series is just, like we said, being your own advocate. And also just knowing that if it's not working, like you have said many times through this talk, that there's so many other options, and don't give up. Just keep going until you feel like yourself again.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and I think you've had some of my colleagues from One Welbeck talking about their particular specialties.
Yes.
I have a steady stream of ladies that come to me from cardiology, from Aisha Opel's clinic,
Yes.
and I send her a whole load back as well.
Yep.
And she's got a particular interest in long COVID, and then I discover that actually lots of the women that she sees with the long COVID have got the most terrible period problems and terrible menopause problems. So the whole business about COVID being, wrapped up in inflammation and causes thrombosis things. So all of these things are interacting. So, and in the past, I've seen women who've been really, really anemic, and they've had a scope put into every orifice apart from the vagina. And they haven't realised that, the gastroenterologists and all the other people and everybody's been looking at them, and nobody's actually asked them about their periods.
Yes.
My God.
Yes.
And it's really important because, they may be maintaining their haemoglobin and their full blood count, so they're not strictly anemic. But if you check their ferritin levels, which is something that Aisha and Opel and I do a lot now we've recognised this, you'll find that their iron stores are way down. And that they really, really benefit from iron treatment. And they often, and that's something else we offer at One Well, but they often can't tolerate oral iron. And anyway, it takes, you have to take a long time for it to build up if your ferritin has got to be very low. But you can come in for an iron infusion. And
you?
Yeah. And you walk out feeling marvellous.
Yeah,
Not
sure.
walk out, but you feel different very quickly. And it's transformational.
Yeah.
I've had one wonderful woman who came to me from Preston. I thought, well, what on earth has she come all this way for? But she couldn't get anyone to help her with this particular problem. And she'd had terrible, terrible perimenopausal heavy periods. She had a ferritin in her boots. She had all sorts of problems. And she couldn't, because no one was listening to her, she couldn't go and have the usual sort of surgery because she was caring for somebody in her life that was very unwell. And she needed to do that. And we got her in and we gave her a Mirena coil, and then we sent her off in the wheelchair after the procedure. I think we took some polyps out or took out a bit of a fibre or something like that, all as a day case. And then we sent her off to have her iron infusion. And, later the same day, I went to discharge her home, and she was going to go back with her husband on the train to Preston. And she said, my sister's going to come and see you next week. She's got exactly the same problem.
Wow.
Iron infusion sounds amazing.
Yep.
Wow, that's incredible. We've had a very good experience with One Wellbeck, with all the doctors and going through the whole menopause program. It has been incredible. It really has. So thank you to all of you for the work that you are doing there.
It's such a pleasure to work with other colleagues who really want to get the best solution for their patients. And I think it's a good recipe.
It really is.
Really is.
You all talk to each other and cross-refer, and it's so helpful to have everything in one place. So
It really is. It really is. Thank you so much for coming on our show and educating and sharing all of your wisdom. We really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk to other women who want to help women.
And people can contact you through St Mary's, or they can come and see you at
One Wellbeck.
At One Wellbeck.
On the 6th floor, the women's health floor.
Lovely. And all of your details are going to be in our show notes. So you can just scroll down if you're listening at home, and you will find all of Dame Lesley Regan's details there. Thank you so much. That was our final show on our menopause mini-series. We hope that it's been informative. We've had some wonderful feedback that we're delighted with. So thank you for that. We will be back next week with a brand new episode. If you want to be in touch, hello@theselfcareclub.co.uk, or you can find us on our socials at selfcareclubpod.
bye-bye.
Kelly Clarkson here to let y'all know that it's the holidays at Wayfair. I love this time of year, y'all. It's always filled with friends and family around the dinner table, holiday traditions, and my favorite, cozy time spent at home. Wayfair is your one-stop holiday shop this season, regardless if you're throwing a party for people and it's all the decor, or if you need to find that perfect gift for someone you love. No matter your space, style, or budget, shop Wayfair.com to get your home holiday ready.
Wayfair, every style, every home.